Hello students, welcome back to my channel. Let us continue learning about constructors. In the previous session we had started this new lesson, which is constructors and destructors. We had seen the definitions of constructor, we had seen a syntax and one example, and also we had learned about the basic rules which need to be followed. Let us recall quickly. So constructors are nothing but they are basic member functions. They are nothing but member functions of a class. For example, if I have a class whose name is A, then if I will have a constructor whose name will be same as that of a class name, and inside this I can initialize the values. For example, if in the private section I have int x of the class, then I can initialize the value for these members. Now when it comes to the main function, this is another important point when it comes to constructors. How do I invoke this particular constructor function? So all I need to do is create object of this class. So whenever I say A1, A2, for example, so when I say A1, automatically the compiler will invoke this and it will initialize the value of x as 1 for A1. Similarly, whenever I've created another object, once again the compiler will invoke this, and for A2 also it will initialize the value as 1. So this is nothing but automatically a shortcut way to automatically initialize the data members of the class without using coding much. So just you have to do is create a constructor. It will construct the values for your data members. I hope you all are able to recall. Now today let us go ahead and see the types of constructor. So basically there are three types of constructor: default constructor, parameterized constructor, and copy constructor. So these are the three types of constructor which we are going to learn in detail. In today's session we will be seeing in detail about default constructor. So what is a default constructor? A constructor which does not accept any arguments is called a zero argument constructor or a default constructor. So remember this, whenever there is a constructor where we are not accepting any arguments, okay, in that case we will call it as a default constructor. So for every object created, this constructor is automatically called. Okay, since there is no argument involved in this particular constructor, remember we can also have arguments in the constructor, but when it comes to default constructor, since we are not maintaining any arguments, what is happening is it is automatically called as soon as we create the object, because we need not pass any parameter. That is why it is automatically called. All objects of a class are initialized to the same set of values by the default constructor. Now why do you think so? Why this is happening? Why? It is because it is automatically called as soon as we create, isn't it? So all the objects, whichever objects you are creating under that class name, what is going to happen? It is going to be initialize the value, set of values, whichever is there inside the constructor. For example, if I have class counter, okay, and I have values, I'm initializing value using this counter constructor, saying a is equal to 1, for example, and this is my data member int a. Now whenever I am creating an object in the main, okay, this is my main function where I am creating the object called as C1, C2, or how much ever up till Cn. Suppose if I have created n number of objects, so what is happening? Every time I am creating an object, automatically this is getting called and a is getting initialized to 1. For C1 also a1 is getting initialized to 1. For C2 also a is getting initialized to 1. For C3 it is a is getting initialized to 1. Like that, up till n, how much ever object I have created, a will be getting initialized to 1. Okay, so this is going to remain constant. So that is what we are saying here. All the objects of the class are initialized to the same set of values by default. Okay, you cannot change the values. This is going to remain fixed when it comes to default constructor. If different objects are to be initialized with different values, it cannot be done using the default constructor. So this is one of the backdrop, you can call it as, because if at all you want to create different objects with the different values, it is not possible, because it will be same set of values. We cannot change that, right? So that is one of the default of a default uh, you can call it as a default constructor, default of a default constructor. Okay, so it is a by default, it is going to initialize the value which is already there. How much ever objects you're going to create of the class, those many objects are going to be initialized with the same set of values. So see the syntax here. The syntax will remain same like what we have learned. Now we are going to, so this is using the scope resolution operator. If at all you are declaring if the definition of your constructor is outside, like in the previous session we have seen the definition was inside. If at all you are defining your constructor outside, that is also possible. All you have to do is use a scope resolution operator. Okay, class name, and of course again one more class name we are using, because we know that our constructor name is that same that as of a class name. That is why class name, scope resolution operator, class name. So this syntax is when you are declaring it outside the class. So this is an example you can see here. Suppose the student is the name of the class here. Okay, the class name is student. This is how you are going to declare the, or you are going to write a default constructor. So here you can have some value initialization also, but the very important point here you should remember is there is no argument which you are passing here. This is an empty, or there is no argument in the default constructor. Okay, I hope this is clear to you. Now let us see an example. So in this example, let us see how a default constructor works. So this program is to show initialization of an object using default constructor. So my class name is X here. When it comes to constructor, you should always remember the class name. So as you can see, this is the function whose name is the same that as of a class. So of course this is my constructor. This is my private variables A and B. I have another member function called as void display, where I am printing the values of A and B. Let us go to the main and see how it works here. In main, I am creating object 1 and object 2. So what is happening? As soon as I create an object 1, it is going to call this. Okay. So under object 1, what is happening? I am going to initialize A is equals to 10 and B is equals to 20. Isn't it? Now next what is happening? I am creating object 2. Once again I am going to call this particular constructor. For object 2 also I am going to initialize A is equal to 10 and B is equal to 20. Right? Now I am saying object 1 dot display. So what is happening? A and B is going to get displayed. So whenever I am calling, whenever this line is going to get executed, what is happening? I am just saying A is equal to 10 is going to get displayed, and no, it's just the 10 and 20 which is going to get displayed. Similarly, when the object 2 is getting displayed over here, again 10 and 20 is going to get displayed. I hope this is clear. So here it is very clearly shows that how much ever object you create, when it comes to default constructor, the value is going to remain same, isn't it? We cannot change the value. So that is the purpose of explaining this particular example, where it is very clear that in a default constructor, whenever we are creating many more objects, the value which is it going to initialize is going to remain same. Remember, this happens only in the default constructor. So this is the output. Right? Now let us see one more program. This is also about default constructor. The only thing is that here we are using a scope resolution operator, like we saw it in the syntax. So see the difference for the previous and this example is, here also I have a class student. These are my member data, but here I have just declared my constructor. I have not defined it. Okay. Why? How do I know this is my constructor? Because the name of the class and the function matches. Next I have another function here, and I have closed the class. After the closing the class, I am defining my constructor. So how I am doing it? It's the same syntax which we follow. Usually we follow whenever we are declaring or defining the function outside the class. We use return type, class name, scope resolution operator, and function name arguments, isn't it? But here when it comes to constructor, we are not having any return type. All we have is class name and the function name, and function name is, since it is similar, all we are left with class name, scope resolution operator, and class name. I hope this is clear why we are getting this particular syntax here, because the class name and the name of the function is same when it comes to constructor, and we do not have any return type for the constructor. That is why this part is empty. Now in this, what I am doing, I am initializing the value of register number to 0, and I am using a string function called as string copy. Whenever I use this function, what happens is whatever the string is given on the right hand side is going to get copied to the left hand side. So that is what is happening. The name is getting the value of book. Okay, the name is getting the value, string value of book, because already the name has been declared as character. Now this book is going to get stored in this particular array, right? So register number to 0 and name book. Now let us see what is happening in the main function. Okay, there is another function which we have declared. So see the difference here. In this function we are having a return type. This is my class name, and also since the name of the function is different, we are very much clearly we can differentiate the different values. Wherein which when it comes to constructor, since they are same, you can't differentiate much, but once you understand the concept clearly, it is very much easy to understand that there is no return type which needs to be mentioned here, and class name is just similar to the name of the function. But when it comes to other member functions, we have to have a return type, we have to have a class name, and then we will mention the function name. Now inside this, we are printing the register numbers and the name. I hope this much is clear. Now let us go ahead and see how does the main work. In the main, I am creating an object S1. So as soon as I create an object, what happens? The compiler will come here and it will initialize the value. So what is the value it is initialized when the S1 is getting called? It is saying register number is equals to 0 and name will have the character value called book. Right. Next, I'm saying cout use of default constructor. So this is going to get printed first, and then I'm saying s1 dot display. So in display, what I'm doing, I am saying after this line we are going to print register number. So from where I'm getting this? Display. Display is over here. So first line saying cout register number, register number. So register number 0, and next line is name, which is of course book. So this is what my output is going to be. Let us see. Yeah, so this is my output. Use of default constructor. From where did I get this line? This line I got it from here. In the main I have said that cout use of default constructor. Next register number is equal to 0 is from here, and name is from here. So this is how my output is going to work. Okay, the main purpose of explaining this program is use of scope resolution operator. You should not get confused whether using a scope resolution operator or not. The constructor works in a similar way. This is mainly our default constructor. So in the previous example, what had happened is we had declared it within the class. Okay, the declaration or the definition of the function had happened within the class. That is why we had not used any scope resolution operator. But when it comes to our next example, it is again a default constructor, but this has been defined outside the class, right? I hope this is clear. Now finally let us see what is the disadvantages of default constructor, which we have already seen one. So when many objects of the same class are created, all the objects are initialized to same set of values by default constructor. Now sometimes this can be advantageous, but sometimes this can be, I think most of the time this will be a disadvantage, because if you are creating an object, we wouldn't want them all to have the same value, isn't it? So that is one of the default. It is not possible to initialize different objects with different initial values using default constructor. Again the same thing. The one and only main drawback of this is all the objects are getting initialized to same set of values, right? So that's all in today's session, students. This was all about default constructor. In the coming sessions we are going to look into the other two types of the constructor also. I hope these videos are helping you all. So thank you for watching. Keep learning.